All right. Are we live? Let's do a mic check. Mic check. Let's do a mic check. Mic check. Mic check. Mic check. Mic check. Let's do a mic check. Mic check. Mic. Yeah. It's very important to get the echo. So the echo means it's picking up my voice and YouTube. Okay, let's um let me just respond to one of my babies. Let me take a sip of my coffee. Oh my god. Very good. Very good coffee. So, let me just I just noticed a couple of interesting videos. Plus, Chinas claims that he finally understands Bell's inequality. So, but I invited him to the VC. I don't see him in the VC. But it would be interesting to talk to someone who understands Bell's theorem. Chinas is much more advanced than I am in most of math and physics. So he is very a good ally. But he is a little bit conspiratorial, so that's a little bit inconvenient. Let me see. Yeah, so yeah, this is a good video I want to get back to. And I want to get back to writing the paper. I'm thinking to rename it Bell's Paradox is Utter Nonsense, but we'll come back to that. So, some interesting news. I don't understand. One of my iPhones, I keep saying, in the terms and conditions, continue, but it gets stuck. I don't know what's going on. It's really weird. Let me pull up. Let me pull up. There it is. Okay, I just need to have me, because YouTube doesn't tell me. There's no way for me to know when someone writes a comment. So I can never know. And StreamYard doesn't tell me either when there's an incoming comment. So I never respond to comments in time. And unfortunately, I had to kick Andrew off my server because he completely misbehaved yesterday. He, he blew air into his mic in order to hurt my ears. So that's unacceptable behavior. I mean, there's a limit. I mean, he always misbehaved. He's always been and it's always he's always been an issue. But unfortunately, he's very smart and he's a great guy to talk to and an ally. But I can't have you on my server if you're gonna misbehave to such an extent that you physically hurt my ears. That's just beyond reproach. So sorry, not sorry. Anyway, so a few interesting videos I just watched, but I don't know if it was on this phone. Yeah, this one. So this is really interesting. Jeff Bezos stuns the audience on Trump and Elon Musk. That is there any way to hear this? No, so I need to actually play it.
If we're talking about Trump, I think it's very interesting. I'm actually very optimistic this time around that we're going to see. I'm very hopeful about this. I think
he's going to join Trump's administration as something. I think it would be great if he did. This would strengthen the administration and give it even more legitimacy. Especially, look, this is the New York Times. Deal, book, summit, whatever. So this is the ultimate leftism, and they invited him, and this is what he has to say.
Have a lot of energy around reducing regulation. And from my point of view, if I can help him do that, I'm going to help him, because we do have too much regulation in this country. This country is so set up to grow. By the way, all of our problems, all of our economic problems, like if you look at the deficit.
He should be given an administration, like something similar. Maybe he should get on the same board as Doge with Vivek and Elon to fix regulations. Is that right? Government efficiency? I mean, and what he says, that's absolutely correct. The analysis is absolutely correct.
I mean, the debt, the national debt, and how gigantic it is as a portion of GDP. These are real problems, and they're real long-term problems. And the way you get out of them is by outgrowing them.
Exactly. It's basically, I would say, as far as I know, it's impossible right now to just pay the debt. I mean, basically. Maybe we can do it, but the simplest way to deal with the debt is to just outgrow it. We can easily outgrow the debt. We can just have an incredible growth, and growth, gives the government income, and it can easily pay the debt.
You're going to solve the problem of the national debt by making a smaller percentage of GDP, not by shrinking the national debt, but by growing the GDP. You have to grow the denominator. And that means you have to grow GDP at 3, 4, 5% a year. And let the national debt.
3, 4, 5% is nothing. You should think in terms of 30, 40, 50% a year. Why not?
Grow slower than that. If you can do that, this is a very manageable problem. So we need a growth orientation in this country. This is the most important thing, a growth mindset. And
we should aim for 100% growth year over year. Why less than 100% growth? That should be the aim. We should always try to double our living standards year over year. Why not? Why are we aiming for 3, 4, 5%?
Luckiest country in the world. We have all these natural resources, including energy independence. We have the best risk capital system in the world by far. So, people.
This is an amazing analysis. That the biggest advantage the United States has over the rest of the planet is the financial system.
Get confused about why does the United States have so much venture success, so much entrepreneurial success? Why are the big tech companies here and not somewhere else? What's really going on with all this dynamism in this country compared to what we see around elsewhere in the world? And there are a bunch of reasons for that, but the biggest one, 8 of 10 points there, is that we have better risk capital.
And if you think China is a good place to have to invest, China just ordered one of their biggest bankers to be executed. I don't even know for what. But once you start executing your bankers, you're going to drive away investments. I mean, obviously, that goes without saying.
So it's not the banking system. We have a good banking system, but so does Europe. What's different here is that you can raise, $50 million of seed capital to do something that only has a 10% chance of working. That's crazy. But the people who are giving you that seed capital know that their expected value is still positive in many cases, or they're at least gambling that that's true. That risk capital system that we have in this country is turning out to be very hard for other countries to do. So we have that. We have, we speak English, and English is turning into the lingua franca of the whole world. It's there's so many advantages here, but we are burdened by excessive permitting and regulation. You can't build a bridge, and all these, what they are. We see these examples all the time. We need to be able to build solar fields and everything else. You're optimistic. I'm super optimistic about this president.
Build solar fields. I mean, building a solar field is impossible in the United States.
Very optimistic that President Trump is serious about this regulatory agenda,
or anywhere in the West.
And I think he's going to. I think he has.
Greta Thunberg, she blocks the creation of solar fields. It's not like she's pro-solar. She's against everything, and so that's regulations. Regulations just block everything.
Good chance of succeeding.
What about the idea that he thinks that the press is the enemy?
Well, I think I'm going to try to talk him out of that idea. I don't think the press.
That's correct. There's no enemy. The enemy is the cancer, and the cancer is the bureaucracy, the legal system, and the deep state, which is the bureaucracy.
This is the enemy, and I don't think he's also.
We need I compare empires to living creatures. A living creature ultimately dies because of cancer. Ultimately. basically. And that when an empire ages, it just develops cancers, and the cancers are all these administrative bodies and all these administrations and all these legal cancers that just grow and grow and grow. Every year they just add more and more laws, so that it becomes impossible to do anything. And then an empire dies. That's how empires die. Every empire died of this cancer.
You've probably grown in the last 8 years. He has too. Like, it's, this is not the case. The press.
In the beginning, the empires grow because there's no bureaucracy and the legal system is, miniature. But then as the empire ages, the legal system grows and everything becomes impossible. And then the empire dies of natural causes. But, that's how empires, that's my theory of the rise and fall of empires. It's just the bureaucracy. It's like, why are the aliens not here? The answer is because of bureaucracy. Their bureaucracy entangles them locally, and they just die of bureaucracy. You would never imagine that the bureaucracy kills all life in the universe. You would never imagine this, but it is a possibility. That is what seems to be killing every empire in the history of this planet. Certainly, that is what is killing the West right now.
This is not the enemy.
I hope you're right.
I hope I'm right too. So let's go persuade him of this. No, let's talk about it. You and I should go. Let's go talk to him.
If we could try.
Good job. He's already telling the New York Times, let's go. So this is terrific.
I really don't. I think that this is absolutely. I don't think he's going to see it the same way. But maybe I'll be wrong.
Was that always your thought, by the way?
What I've seen so far is that he is calmer than he was the first time and more confident, more settled.
Let me ask one related question. I want to actually get just.
I don't know if Trump changed. I guess he did change. I don't know. I don't know if Trump changed or Bezos changed and everybody else. I mean, especially Elon Musk. I mean, Elon Musk was against Trump last time he left the administration. I mean, Trump created this board of all the billionaires and it completely fell apart. And the last one to leave basically was Elon Musk. He said Trump is impossible because Trump doesn't believe in global warming.
The space, but actually is an interesting segue to space because we were talking earlier this morning to Sam Altman about Elon Musk and Elon Musk's relationship with the president, interestingly. And there's been a lot of questions about whether there could be the possibility that Elon, given his proximity, would make things difficult for people who are his competitors. Elon, in the space context, is your biggest competitor.
Yes.
Does this concern you?
Well, they're certainly very able competitors. I mean, this is an arena where I have the.
No, I know he's a great competitor. No, I'm saying, does it concern you, his proximity?
No, I was headed there. But I'm just saying they're certainly very good competitors, and no doubt about that. I take at face value what has been said, which is that he's not going to use his political power to advantage his own companies or to disadvantage his competitors. I take that at face value. Again.
I mean, Bezos has tried to entangle Musk in paperwork, tried to block Starship using legal paperwork. So, I mean, Bezos hasn't been the nicest. Anyway, that was one very interesting video. Mark Dice is an idiot. I mean, I used to like him. I used to be like right wing, like extreme right like him, but now he's just racist. Here, let's listen to this idiot.
Now we've all heard about the unusual is destiny has been a mantra for the Democrat Party for many years as they've anxiously awaited granting amnesty to the more than 30 million illegal aliens living in the United States. Demographics is destiny has been a mantra for the Democrat Party for many years as they've anxiously awaited granting amnesty to the more than 30 million illegal aliens living in the United States. They deceptively underestimate the number to be only 11 million, but it's triple that at this point. If you do the math, that means nearly 1 in 10 people living in the United States are illegal aliens. 10%. This is all part of their plan, but you're not supposed to talk about that unless you agree with it. Politico, a leftist online outlet popular amongst DC elitists, once admitted back in 2013 that, quote, the immigration proposal pending Congress would transform the nation's political landscape for a generation or more, pumping as many as 11 million new Hispanic voters into the electorate a decade from now in ways that, if current trends hold, would produce an electorate bonanza for Democrats and cripple Republican prospects in many states. They now win easily. It's now been a decade, and again, the numbers are over 30 million today. But that same year, 2013,
Yeah, but Trump basically won because of the Hispanics, the Hispanic vote. So the Hispanics are naturally conservative. So I don't know. I mean, what an idiot. Literally just an idiot.
Center for American Progress, a Democrat think tank, openly admitted, quote, supporting real immigration reform that contains a pathway to citizenship for our nation's 11 million undocumented immigrants is the only way to maintain electoral strength in the future. They claim to be a nonpartisan organization, but it was founded by John Podesta and filled with George Soros disciples and former Clinton and Obama staffers. So they couldn't help but admit.
The United States should let in every genius and anyone who wants to join the United States and come to the United States and work hard and help out. Just like Elon Musk. Elon Musk is an African and he's helping the United States. So we should have many more Elon Musks. We should invite all the geniuses to join us. But if it's up to this idiot, no, it's no good. Well, we don't like, listen to what he says.
What immigration reform means to them. For years, Democrats have talked with glee about the population growth in Texas and other border states, which is a code word for the influx of millions of illegal aliens. Newsweek magazine even ran a headline titled, America's Getting Less White, and that will save it, as paleoconservative Pat Buchanan warned over 20 years ago in his 2002 book.
I mean, obviously, those headlines are terrible. I mean, those headlines are just as racist as this idiot.
Death of the West. Quote, uncontrolled immigration threatens to deconstruct the nation we grew up in and convert America into a conglomerate of peoples with almost nothing in common. Not history, heroes, language, culture, faith, or ancestors. Liberal European leaders have been obsessed with needing more racial diversity in their countries as well. But
I mean, this idiot is reacting to those idiots. It's like two idiots looking in the mirror and they're seeing each other's reflection. Both are idiots.
Immigration activists seem to only want white European countries flooded with immigrants from South America, Africa, and the Middle East. Interestingly, nobody's demanding that Israel accept an influx of non-Jewish refugees.
Non-Jewish. Oh, yeah. Yeah, because there's a tiny country on the planet that is designed to save Jews, because everyone seems to want to kill them. I don't get it, but everyone hates these people. So there's one tiny itty-bitty little country that is designed to save them, and he's upset at that. That's the feature. That is what that country is designed to do. It's not, and by the way, it has nothing to do with ethnicity. It's a religion. In Israel, there's people of all different ethnicities, and you can convert to their religion. So it has nothing to do with ethnicity. Is there a picture of Israel? Ethnicities. I just want to see a picture. Is there a picture of Ethiopian Jewish women? These are Ethiopian Jewish women. This is I don't know what this is. I just want to see a picture of what Israel looks like. What color skin? I don't know. There's barely any pictures in Brave. Brave doesn't have pictures. Videos. I mean, there's all different types of ethnicities. It's not. I mean, this guy is white, fine, he's European. What do we got? Yeah, it's difficult to find just pictures of people in Israel, but fine, whatever.
From other Middle Eastern countries. How about more African Muslims emigrate to Israel from places like Sudan or Somalia? If multiculturalism,
there is Ethiopian Jews, but they have to be Jewish. That's the designation of the country. The country was basically built to save the Jews from being massacred everywhere else in the world. That's its purpose. It has a purpose.
is so great, then why should they not want to participate in the global diversification? Subscribe to my channel, by the way, if you're new here, because you're obviously not going to hear any of this on Fox News.
Israel is diversified. Why does this idiot why do all these racist anti-Semites, why do they keep talking about Israel? It's like Israel, all the Jews left you alone and went to Israel. You should be happy, but they're not happy. They're not happy with Israel. They're not happy with that. They're just unhappy people.
The Daily Wire or any other brand name
What an idiot.
conservative outlet. Have you noticed?
Okay, it's enough. what else did I see that might be interesting? This guy's show was cut short. I don't know why. 12 minutes. Usually it's like 2 hours. Yeah, Frank Abagnale Jr. seems to be a fraud. That his whole story is a lie. He was never this whatever the movie says, he was never that. He was just a petty thief. What is this with dark matter?
Is back in. Isn't surprising given the fact that for a long time we've not been able to observe things at huge distances from us, which we don't yet understand what went on in the early days of the universe. Which isn't surprising given the fact that for a long time we've not been able to observe things at huge distances from us, which we see as they were billions of years ago because light takes time to travel to us. We didn't have any data about what was going on back then because telescopes just couldn't see objects that far away from us. That is until the launch of the James Webb Space Telescope, which has now allowed us to see galaxies at greater distances than ever before. And those galaxies are confusing us because they're not what we expected them to look like in the early days of the universe given all of our best theories and models, which again is not surprising. There's all sorts of new ideas and hypotheses raised to explain what could be going on in the early universe that we haven't anticipated yet. And we've seen that happening this past month when this research paper from Magor and collaborators was published, which has been focusing on that overmassive galaxies problem that JWST has found. I've covered on this channel before, including their discovery and some possible explanations for them. Now, Magor and collaborators have raised another idea to explain these overmassive galaxies, pointing out that their existence is actually a prediction of a theory known as MOND, an alternate theory of gravity that doesn't need dark matter to explain.
MOND is the antithesis of ether. So if MOND is right, then that's one of the best evidence against the ether. But the fact that MOND has been disproved thus far is evidence for the ether. The fact that the force of gravity is related to the inverse square law. The inverse square law is evidence for the ether because it's Gaussian flow, which is a fluid flow, which is the ether.
The universe. Now, I was going to save covering this research until my Night Sky News episode for December this month, but after so many of you online asked me to cover this research, I figured we've got to do this justice. Let's give it its own entire video and dive into all of the details. So, in this video, we are going to cover first a quick recap on JWST's overmassive galaxies problem. Second, what Magor and collaborators are claiming can solve this by using this alternate theory of gravity MOND. And finally, the caveats to this claim and its implications. Like, does this mean that we're going to have to throw out the idea of dark matter entirely? But before we dive into all that, Christmas is coming up, and maybe some of you is a novium turn into in outer space. Makes me want one of those billable and the premium and high-end. Time magazine agrees. They're named.
Who uses pens?
Use the code Dr. Becky sponsoring this video, and now let's dive into it.
By the way, she's hot. I mean, she has a beautiful face, but also a perfect body.
This and start
A lot of British chicks have great bodies. I mean, they're just beautiful.
with a quick recap on JWST's overmassive galaxies problem. So, back in March 2023, Labby and collaborators reported that they found 6 distant galaxies in JWST data that were much brighter than expected, which I covered on this channel at the time. And in that video, I explained how if you've got more light there in a
I mean, they're basically thick. I mean, you can tell that she's thick. You can see from her face, she's really not fat, but thick. She has really wide hips, perfect hips.
galaxy, and that generally means that you need more stars to
You can see it in her trip to CERN. She had a video, and you could see that she's perfect.
account for the amount of light that you see, meaning your galaxy is heavier, it has more mass. And so what we do is we fit models of how massive these galaxies are to account for the light that we detect. And when Labby and collaborators did that for the 6 galaxies they found, they were far more massive than expected for how distant they were. Now, as I said, because light takes time to travel to us, the more distant a galaxy is, the
1 second.
earlier in the universe's lifetime that we happen to be seeing it. So for those 6 distant galaxies that Labby and collaborators observed, the universe just hasn't been around for long enough to have formed that many stars in such a short time as the time that we're observing them at least according to our best models of the universe. And that's assuming that you have the same efficiency of star formation that you see in the nearby universe around us, which is a big if. And it's why people tend to start doubting those values that you get for the early universe in terms of the mass that we think these galaxies are. These calculations are fraught with pitfalls, not least because that conversion of the amount of light that you observed to mass in stars requires you to assume some form of distribution, so some spread in the different types or masses of stars that you have in a galaxy. So how many of the heavier, brighter stars do you have versus the much lighter, faint?
I don't understand why there is any relationship between the age and she's not. Did she explain this relationship? Where is this? Where does it begin?
to most countries. So thanks again to Novium for sponsoring this video. And now let's dive into all of this and start with a quick recap on JWST's overmassive galaxies problem. So back in March 2023, Lavi and collaborators reported that they've
The population of red candidate massive galaxies about 600 million mega. I don't know what is MYR. After the Big Bang, million years, I guess. So, Evo Labe, I'm looking if I can figure out where this is coming from. Matthews, I guess it's half American. Galaxies with stellar masses as high as roughly 10 to the 11 solar masses. Galaxies with stellar masses. Stellar means stars. Stellar masses as high as roughly 10 to the 11 solar masses have been identified out to redshifts Z of roughly 6. I'm not up to date on this. Around 1 billion years after the Big Bang. It has been difficult to find massive galaxies at even earlier times. So the galaxies are massive?
found 6 distant galaxies in JWST data that were much brighter than expected, which I covered on this channel at the time. And in that video, I explained how if you've got more light there in a galaxy, then that generally means that you need more stars to account for the amount of light that you see, meaning that your galaxy is heavier, it has more mass. And so what we do is we fit models of how massive these galaxies are to account for the light that we detect. And my lab collaborators did that for the 6 galaxies they found. They were far more massive than expected for how distant they were. Now, as I said, because light takes time to travel to us, the more distant a galaxy is, the earlier in the universe's lifetime that we happen to be seeing it. So for those 6 distant galaxies that Labi and collaborators observed, the universe just hasn't been around for long enough to have formed that many stars in such a short time as the time that we're observing them at least according to our best models of the universe, and that's assuming that you have the same efficiency of stars.
Okay, so if you assuming star formation efficiency that we see right now, so if you assume the star formation efficiency hasn't changed, then you shouldn't have as many stars, but there's too many stars in the earlier universe. Okay.
Formation that you see in the nearby universe around us, which is a big if.
Right, that's an if. Okay, assuming that.
It's why people tend to start doubting those values that you get for the early universe in terms of the
Okay, so it's possible that this if is wrong.
mass that we think these galaxies are. These calculations are fraught with pitfalls, not least because that conversion of the
With what? Fraught with hip-offs? Hip-flops? What? Hip-flops?
amount of light that you observe to mass in stars requires you to assume some form of distribution, so some spread in the different types or masses of stars that you have in a galaxy. So how many of the heavier, brighter stars do you have versus the much lighter, fainter stars do you have? And we assume that that spread is the same as we see in the Milky Way galaxy, our own galaxy. But that might not be true in the early universe. So a few months later, in 2023, another paper was released suggesting that this could all be explained if that spread of the masses of stars that you have, which is known as the IMF, the initial mass function, just varied ever so slightly. And again, I covered this in more detail in a previous video. If that can change, what it means is that those galaxies that JWST has spotted aren't overmassive at all, and instead they've just formed more of the heavier stars that are brighter, which if you saw last week's video, you'll also know is what physics tells us we should expect to see in the early universe. Not only that, but there's another step in between assuming that distribution of the masses of stars and still getting
Maybe I should watch more of her stuff and less of Sabine. Sabine doesn't get so technical.
mass, because you need to then model for how much light each of those different types of stars, those different masses of stars gives off. And we have a pretty good idea of what that is, what's called stellar population models. But again, they're good, but they're not perfect, right? So there's always going to be some uncertainties in there. So even when these galaxies were first their discovery was announced, people already doubted those masses were as high.
Why does she have a truck in the background? What is this yellow truck? I mean, yellow Jeep.
As Lavi and collaborators had estimated. Now, very recently, we also saw this paper by Krausse and collaborators back in September 2024, which again, I covered in a nice guy.
Wow. Did you see how hot that chick is?
Collaborators had estimated. Now, very recently, we also saw this paper by
Wow, that's a beautiful face.
Krausian collaborators back in September 2024, which again, I covered in a Night Sky News video at the time. And they claimed there's an extra layer of confusion in all of this as well, because some of the light from those galaxies is actually not coming from stars at all. It's actually coming from the regions in the center around the supermassive black hole that's growing. And that's why the masses are overestimated, because not all that light is actually coming from stars. But this research paper was from the Full Science.
Okay, so there's another caveat. Wait, any coffee left? A little bit? Yummy.
Team who applied for this big survey with JWST where these galaxies were found. And that meant they had access to the full data set, meaning they could find more of these very massive galaxies in the early universe in JWST imaging. And while they found that they weren't necessarily overmassive, they did find that there are roughly twice as many massive galaxies in JWST's data of the early universe than we should expect from our best models.
Okay, this is too much detail. I'm not interested in all the detail. Just let me know what's the conclusion, and based on that, I'll fix my priors. But there's no conclusion. There's so much confusion, so many ifs and ifs and ifs, and we're not sure. So, if you're not sure, then okay, let me know when you're sure. So I'll update my priors. So we're done with that. Let me see. Yeah, Syria. This is incredible. So it sounds like Turkey just came out and said that they are behind this revolution. The insurgency, and Turkey said we tried working with Assad from Syria and he's impossible, so we've decided to dethrone him. So Assad is basically part of the Russian axis, so this is hurting Russia significantly. What else we got? Yeah, Cenk bows to MAGA. Cenk is basically also joining Trump, basically. Biggest ideas, okay. Yeah, this assassination is crazy. Some people say that it's a legit assassin. It's a professional assassin. What else we got? Hit. Can you hear that noise? Let me see. No, you can't hear it. There's like people banging drums outside like crazy. What are they doing? I mean, it's making so much noise. Why would they make all this noise? What's going on? Yeah, so Assad seems to be collapsing, which is I think Israel is also involved. I think this is Israel working with Turkey. Israel and Turkey are really weird. Sometimes Erdogan speaks against Israel, but he seems to be collaborating with Israel, or Israel is collaborating, or I don't know if Israel is involved. Now, Jared Isaacman has been appointed by Trump to be NASA administrator. That's amazing because he is a billionaire and he's a legit good guy. What else we got? Yeah. All right. This guy hates Elon Musk. Oh my God. He claims Elon Musk is on drugs and that Elon Musk needs help because he's taking whatever. I don't know what drugs. All right. Yeah, that would be terrific. I'm glad this guy's back. But yeah, he used to be on with his wife. He has a Chinese wife. And then they stopped. She has a channel with cookies or something. Now he's back. This is great. He's really great. He has a PhD in physics, actually. What else might be interesting? Jesus Christ. Jesus Christ. Well, it's a good thing you can't hear the noise. What else we got? Our universe is not locally real. Yeah. Definitely. So Destiny is gay? I don't get it. He's gay. Maybe he's bisexual? But does he prefer guys? What else we got? All right. I think we're done. Okay. Maybe let's get back to this video that we were watching.
And given that you get something, there must have been something fixed about what Bob could get. But Alice could also measure in the x direction. The same thing is true. Could choose to measure the spin in the z direction, and then we would know what Bob was going to get. Therefore, whatever he gets, there is some pre-existing fact of the matter about what Bob would get. There's no signal travel faster than the speed of light in their conception. In ordinary quantum mechanics, it does, but they don't allow that. Okay, so they say that we don't know what Alice is going to get, but she'll get something. And given that she gets something, there must have been something fixed about what Bob could get. But Alice could also measure in the x direction. The same thing is true. So it must therefore be true that even though we don't know what it is, there must be facts of the matter about what Bob will get when he measures the spin either in the z direction or the x direction. But quantum mechanics says that there cannot be a fact of the matter about the spin in the z direction and the x direction at the same time. Quantum mechanics implies the uncertainty principle, which we talked about last time, which implies you can't predict both z spin.
This is what Einstein said. This is the EPR paper. The EPR paper used the uncertainty principle. They didn't use spin. They used measurement in two directions or whatever. They use the uncertainty principle to disprove quantum mechanics. They use quantum mechanics to disprove quantum mechanics.
And x spin simultaneously. So again, you're taking this on faith. I'm stating it. But the way we stated the uncertainty principle is a statement about the uncertainty of position and momentum. It turns out to work exactly the same way for spin in the vertical direction or the horizontal direction. You can't have any quantum state with a definite fact of the matter about what the spin is in the x direction and a fact of the matter about what the spin is in the z direction and in the x direction.
Right, but if Alice measures in the z and Bob measures in the x, you now seem to know too much, and the uncertainty principle doesn't allow you to know both directions at the same time.
So this is the EPR argument. Let's see if I can squeeze it down here so it's all visible. It's a long argument.
Yeah, that's the EPR argument. You see, I got it right, even though I didn't know it's the EPR argument. Yeah, I mean, this is from yesterday. Fine, good.
And they say, we set up this thing, we imagine doing experiments, we don't need to actually do them, we imagine doing them, and the hypothetical outcome of these experiments.
But I don't think the EPR mentions spin.
Implies a fact of the
I don't even know if there was spin during EPR. Maybe there was.
Matter about what reality is doing over at Bob's spin. And that fact of the matter seems to be something that is incompatible with the basic postulates of quantum mechanics. Therefore, they say, quantum mechanics must be incomplete. They don't say it's wrong. They didn't say like any of the experimental predictions of quantum mechanics.
They're showing a contradiction within quantum mechanics. Quantum mechanics is contradicting quantum mechanics. It's good enough, and you can stop at that point and say, okay, we found an internal contradiction within quantum mechanics. Then that's, when we need to fix it, when it needs to be addressed. It's good enough. Why is there 3 messages? Okay. Look into 720-degree symmetry. They say you can't have classical systems like that. Rotational symmetry? I don't know what he's talking about. I don't know. Okay, I think we're done with this.
Are false or anything like that. They said that it can't be the case that quantum mechanics is the final answer. What they have in mind secretly.
I see. So that's what they meant by incomplete, because of the internal contradiction. They could have just said there's an internal contradiction instead of use the term incomplete. I kept reading incomplete. Everybody keeps saying incomplete. The EPR said it's incomplete. What do you mean? I don't know what it means to be incomplete. Every system is incomplete. There's no complete system. 1 + 1 = 2 is incomplete.
Not so secretly, in their back of their minds is something like hidden variables, that in addition to the wave function, there's some other variables describing the real world, and these other variables travel along with the spin, and these other variables do not.
They don't have to offer the answer. That was part of their mistake. You don't have to offer an alternative. All you have to do, this is the problem. People don't know how to debate. You really have to learn to debate before you do any science, before you do anything. You first have to know how to debate. So all that EPR had to do is just point out this self-contradiction within quantum mechanics. Nothing else. Once a system is self-contradictory, that's it. That's enough. You don't have to say anything else. You don't have to say it's incomplete and nothing else, or hidden variables. You don't have to bring anything up. Bring up anything. Just bring up the fact that there's a self-contradiction. That's it. Just point it out.
Know ahead of time whether Bob's going to get spin up or spin down, or spin left or spin right. Okay, we don't know because all we know is a wave function, so we assign it a 50-50 probability. But the universe, nature, God knows what Bob is going to get. Okay, that's what EPR had in mind, and they're trying to encourage the rest of the physics community to go along with them. And it was in fact Schrodinger commenting on this EPR experiment who coined the term entanglement as a way of describing this particular situation. So entanglement makes EPR believe that quantum mechanics is not done. Now, the conventional Copenhagen way out of this is just to deny locality, right? To say, you know what, the world's not.
So let me see if I can repeat the EPR argument. So uncertainty says you cannot measure Z in the Z spin and X spin simultaneously. That's quantum mechanics. That's Heisenberg uncertainty. All right. But because you can create entangled particles that have exactly opposite spins, and you can measure them both simultaneously, then you should be able to measure the Z on one of them and the X on the other, and you have now violated the uncertainty principle. But I'm not sure if that's your claim. Now I'm confused. I mean, you can't say that you cannot. I mean, quantum mechanics says you cannot measure Z and X simultaneously. But entangled particles allow you to do that. So what's the I don't understand the argument. Well, what is the argument? Let's start over from EPR. Let's see how he presents the EPR argument. Why is it so slow? Jesus Christ.
It will be a contradiction with special relativity, but it does seem to be, it makes us uncomfortable a little bit, okay? However, spirit of special relativity, but not the letter of the law, because Bob does not get any information from Alice measuring her spin. You cannot use this kind of entanglement to actually communicate. It's literally
Let's start from here, maybe.
entanglement was raised, it took a while, and not very long. Quantum mechanics sort of came to its mature form around 1927 at the Fifth Solvay conference when Einstein and Bohr were arguing, and Schrödinger and Pauli and Heisenberg and the whole gang was there talking to each other. But it wasn't until Einstein and Schrödinger had a bunch of correspondence. They sent letters back and forth. And they were kvetching. They were complaining about the Copenhagen interpretation of quantum mechanics, which they didn't like. Einstein very famously thought that quantum mechanics was not the final answer. He understood quantum mechanics as well as anyone. He was not against it. He just thought it was a stepping stone to something more profound, something deeper, and he was advocating that people look for that deeper thing. They didn't listen to him. So his most famous argument was the 1935 EPR paper. Einstein, Podolsky, and Rosen. EPR paper found something deeper, and he was advocating that people look for that deeper thing. They didn't listen to him. So his most famous argument was the 1935 EPR paper. Einstein, Podolsky, and Rosen. Einstein and Rosen were good friends who collaborated a lot. Einstein, Podolsky, and Rosen. Podolsky was a younger guy, and the rumor is, well, I don't know if it's a rumor, but what I read was Podolsky, when EPR wrote their paper, Podolsky leaked it to the New York Times. And the New York Times had like a front page story about this paper in theoretical physics, and Einstein was furious. He was furious both to the New York Times and to Podolsky. In fact, what I read is that he never talked to
Why was he upset? I don't understand why he was upset.
Podolsky again. So don't blab about your work with your famous advisor to New York Times. You could get in trouble. Anyway, this is
What do you mean blab? He published a paper. I don't get it. Was it before they published?
the EPR paper, which became very
Or maybe Einstein wanted the New York Times to talk to him so that Einstein would have a chance to explain it, I guess.
famous. And it's a little bit misunderstood sometimes because people sometimes get the idea that, again, Einstein was just kvetching. He was just complaining that he didn't like quantum mechanics. And this is the paper that introduced the concept, not the phrase, but the concept of spooky action at a distance, which goes down in infamy as at a distance, as a complaint about quantum mechanics. And you can see what it is. I don't need to do it in detail. If you have psi, if you have the wave function of this form, 1 over square root of 2, let's use a conventional thing that people like just so everyone's happy. Up, down, plus, down, up. Okay? So the spins are oppositely
Let me see. I think maybe we should take a break. I gotta go poop my pants again.
aligned. And here's Alice on planet Earth. She's staying behind. She's going to measure her spin. But we sent Bob out to Alpha Centauri. And there's a planet orbiting Alpha Centauri. Bob's going to measure his spin there. So we create 2 entangled spins. That's not hard to do. You can do that in the lab very easily. You hand one to Alice. You hand one to Bob. You say, don't observe them yet. You send Bob out on a spaceship. It takes him several years to get to Alpha Centauri. And then you say, now you're allowed to look at them. And the point is that if it's in this form right here, then when Alice measures hers, she doesn't know what answer she's going to get. It could be spin up or spin down. But once she does that measurement, then the wave function collapses every
Wait, what?
planet Earth. She's staying behind. She's going to measure her spin. But we sent Bob out to Alpha Centauri. And there's a planet orbiting Alpha Centauri. And Bob's going to measure his spin there. So we create 2 entangled spins.
Wait, I was thinking about pooping instead of
You're called to
listening.
again. So don't blab about your work with your famous advisor to New York Times. You could get in trouble. Anyway, this is the EPR paper, which became very famous. And it's a little bit misunderstood sometimes because people sometimes get the idea that, again, Einstein was just kvetching. He just complained that he didn't like quantum mechanics. And this is a paper that introduced the concept, not the phrase, but the concept of spooky action at a distance, which goes down in infamy as at a distance, as a complaint about quantum mechanics. And you can see what it is. I don't need to do it in detail. If you have psi, if you have the wave function of this form, 1 over square root of 2, let's use a conventional thing that people like just so everyone's happy. Up, down, plus, down, up. Okay? So the spins are oppositely aligned. And here's Alice on planet Earth. She's staying behind. She's going to measure her
So
spin.
2 particles are oppositely aligned. Alice and Bob's particles are always oppositely aligned.
But we sent Bob out to Alpha Centauri. And there's a planet orbiting Alpha Centauri. And Bob's going to measure his spin there. So we create 2 entangled spins. That's not hard to do. You can do that in lab.
This implies that we're measuring them along the z-axis.
Very easily. You hand one to Alice, you hand one to Bob, you say, don't observe them yet. You send Bob out on a spaceship. It takes him several years to get to Alpha Centauri. And then you say, now you're allowed to look at them. And the point is that if it's in this form right here, then when Alice measures hers, she doesn't know what answer she's going to get. It could be spin up or spin down. But once she does that measurement, then the wave function collapses everywhere, according to the conventional Copenhagen rules of quantum mechanics. So we instantly know that whatever answer Alice got, Bob is going to get the opposite answer. This bugged Einstein. It's true. You can't really argue about that because Einstein had invented special relativity. He invented the rules that you're not allowed to move faster than the speed of light. It seems like information is moving faster than the speed of light. Alice did something, and that instantly changed the state of Bob's spin. If Alice measures spin up, we know that Bob's spin is now going to be spin down, 100% chance. Okay. How does it know? How did the information get out there? Because as we talked about, in the space-time video, if you have 2 events that are separated outside their light cones, space-light separation, you can't even say universally which one happens first, right? So in someone's perspective, Alice measures hers and then Bob measures his. But in someone else's perspective, Bob measured his first and then Alice measured hers. And so which one is it that caused the other one to collapse? And this would, as you might expect, drive Einstein crazy. Now it seems, if you think about it, that this thought experiment exploits a little bit of a loophole. It violates the spirit of special relativity, but not the letter of the law, because Bob does not get any information from Alice measuring her spin. You cannot use this kind of entanglement to actually communicate. There's literally a theorem you can derive that you can't communicate with people just by measuring entangled systems that you share with each other. Because if you think of it, Alice measures, let's say, spin up. She knows now that Bob's spin is 100% spin down by the collapse of the wave function, but Bob doesn't know that. If Bob thought that his spin was 50% up, 50% down before Alice did her measurement, that's still what he thinks. Alice could send him a message, right, saying, hey, I measured spin up, therefore you're going to measure spin down. But to send that message, she needs to send him a message using ordinary slower than light communication or light speed communication channels. So no information is actually communicated between Alice and Bob, but somehow an influence of some sort is being communicated. And so it's not that it is straightforwardly a contradiction with special relativity, but it does seem to be, it makes us uncomfortable a little bit, okay?
Wait, but Alice can... I'm just thinking how they view it. So Alice can measure, find out whether it's up or down, then send a message to Bob before Bob measures and tell Bob, let's say, it's up, and then Bob knows that it's going to be up, but instead of measuring up, he's going to measure it to the right. I mean, he's going to know the answer before measuring it. Of what benefit is that? I don't see the benefit.
However, it's very important to emphasize here that it's not just making us uncomfortable. Einstein and Podolsky and Rosen were smarter than that. They didn't write a paper just saying we are uncomfortable about this. They went on to make an argument, and the argument was something like the following. It's a little bit tricky, so let me try to explain it. Let me try to keep this on here so you see the basic picture.
Yeah, it's really tricky. The whole thing is really tricky, and I think this is why everyone gives up and everyone gives in to Bell, because the whole argument is really tricky. It's a paradox.
They had the following idea. So EPR said, if we could, let's say, in principle predict, they said a bunch of things. This is one thing. Actually, let me back up. They just took for granted locality. So by which they mean there is no spooky action at a distance, right? They just assume that there is not actually information that goes from Alice to Bob, even if it's inaccessible to Bob. They just refuse to believe that information is zipping along faster than speed of light.
Yeah, that's my assumption.
No spooky action at a distance, okay? No instantaneous flow of information. And then they also said, they made up this criterion about elements of reality. We don't need to go into the technical jargon they use. What they said was, if we could, in principle, predict with 100% accuracy what the outcome of an experiment is going to be, then there must be something real. It's hard to say this in words that everyone would agree with, unless you're just going to quote them exactly, but the idea is something pre-existing and real that leads to that experimental outcome. So if you didn't know that we were doing quantum mechanics and trying to say subtle things about experimental outcomes and spooky action at a distance, if someone said, if I have a physical setup where I put a certain physical system into a certain state, and I guarantee that when you measure a certain property of that system, you will get the following answer with 100% certainty. And they ask you, do you think it's okay to say, okay, there's something real about that system that reflects that particular measurement outcome that you are going to get with 100% certainty? I think that most people would say, yes, that seems reasonable. Like, that's not a crazy thing to demand. So, but when they couple that with this locality thing, they say something like the following: if Alice measures the spin, the vertical direction, and gets spin up, we don't know what Alice is going to measure. They admit that, right? I'm not trying to give you a spooky way, a secret way of saying what Alice is going to get ahead of time. They say maybe Alice will get spin up, maybe spin down. But if she gets spin up, then suddenly we know with 100% certainty what Bob will get. If Alice got spin up, we know Bob will get spin down. Okay, so she could have gotten that answer according to the rules of quantum mechanics. Therefore, there could be something definite about what Bob will get. Okay. Furthermore, here's the secret: Alice could measure z spin up or down, right? Or she could measure x spin. In other words, she could choose to measure the spin along a perpendicular axis. You might call these spin right or spin left, two different outcomes that she could have gotten. And it turns out, and it's just a statement that you're going to trust me, or your take on faith, if the wave function psi is 1 over the square root of 2, spin up, spin down, plus spin down, spin up, then that equals, by math, by changing variables, 1 over the square root of 2, spin right, spin left, plus spin left, spin right. In other words, that's a fancy math way of saying, no matter what axis Alice uses to measure the spin of her particle, whatever answer she gets, Bob's going to get the other one. Bob's spin is anti-correlated with Alice, no matter which axis she picks. This is just a fact about quantum mechanics that we're not going to bother deriving. So
You don't have to derive it. I mean, why? I mean, it's just by symmetry. You made this claim. Whatever caused you to make this claim would cause you to make this claim just by symmetry. It should be true, I think, without loss of generality. So you're picking the z-axis without loss of generality, meaning you could have picked the x-axis. So everything if this is true, then this is true.
So EPR say, if Alice, this is what EPR says, I gotta get it exactly right. Alice could choose to measure the spin in the z direction, and then we would know what Bob was going to get. Therefore, whatever she gets, there is some pre-existing fact of the matter about what Bob would get. There's no signal travel faster than the speed of light in their conception. In ordinary quantum mechanics, it does, but they don't allow that. Okay, so they say that we don't know what Alice is going to get, but she'll get something. And given that she gets something, there must have been something fixed about what Bob could get. But Alice could also measure in the x direction. The same thing is true. So it must therefore be true that even though we don't know what it is, there must be facts of the matter about what Bob will get when he measures the spin either in the z direction or the x direction. But quantum mechanics says that there cannot be a fact of the matter about the spin in the z direction and the x direction at the same time. Quantum mechanics implies the uncertainty principle, which we talked about last time, which implies you can't predict both z spin and x spin simultaneously. So again, you're taking this on faith. I'm stating it. But the way we say the uncertainty principle is a statement about the uncertainty of position and momentum. It turns out to work exactly the same way for spin in the vertical direction or the horizontal direction. You can't have any quantum state with a definite fact of the matter about what the spin is in the x direction and a fact of the matter about what the spin is in the z direction and in the x direction. So this is the EPR argument. Let's see if I can squeeze it down here so that it's all visible. It's a long argument, and they say, we set up this thing, we imagine doing.
I don't understand the argument. I don't understand the argument about the fact of the matter. I mean, the fact of the matter is the claim that there is an actual spin, that the moon is there when you're not observing it. I guess that's what they're referring to, but I don't understand their argument.
We don't need to actually do them. We imagine doing them, and the hypothetical outcome of these experiments implies a fact of the matter about what reality is doing over at Bob's spin. And that fact of the matter seems to be something that is incompatible with the basic postulates of quantum mechanics. Therefore, they say, quantum mechanics must be incomplete. They don't say it's wrong. They didn't say like any of the experimental predictions of quantum mechanics are false or anything like that. They said that it can't be the case that quantum mechanics is the final answer. What they have in mind secretly, not so secretly, in the back of their minds is something like hidden variables. That in addition to the wave function, there are some other variables describing the real world. And these other
I don't understand the argument. What is the argument? She could have. Who says that you can predict both Z and X? If you know her Z result, you know his Z result. You don't know his X result. His X result is 50-50. I don't understand. What am I missing?
variables travel along with the spin, and these other variables do know ahead of time whether Bob's going to get spin up or spin down, or spin left or spin right. Okay, we don't know because all we know is the wave function, so we assign it a 50-50 probability. But the universe, nature, God knows what Bob is going to get. Okay, that's what EPR had in mind, and they're trying to encourage the rest of the physics community to go along with them. And it was in fact Schrodinger commenting on this EPR.
I guess because of this, because if we know now her up and down, this implies this. Once this collapses, then this collapses. Yeah, but we don't know. She never measured in this way. I don't understand. I don't get it.
Our experiment who coined the term entanglement as a way of describing this particular situation. So entanglement makes EPR believe that quantum mechanics is not done. Now, the conventional Copenhagen way out of this is just to deny locality, right? To say, you know what, the world's not local. Sorry, Professor Einstein. Somehow an influence propagates from Alice's spin.
It's interesting that he calls everyone professor. Professor just means teacher.
Continuously to Bob's spin. That is what we would teach our undergraduates right now. But of course, Einstein didn't want to admit that. And so the quest was on after EPR to say, would it be possible to construct a version of quantum mechanics that lived up to what EP and R were looking for? That is to say, a version of quantum mechanics that was local, that could actually explain all the empirical predictions of quantum mechanics. And sadly, no, is roughly speaking the answer. And that is the conclusion of Bell's theorem. So John Bell, it's a very interesting story. I recommend that you read Adam Becker's book, What is Real? For those of you who are Mindscape podcast listeners, I interviewed Adam about this book that he wrote about the history of quantum mechanics in the 20th century and how hard it was for people post-1935 to get any traction thinking about the foundations of quantum theory. So John Bell was a particle physicist, quantum field theorist. He worked at CERN. He did very respectable work in particle physics. And sort of in his spare time, without telling anybody, he thought about the foundations of quantum mechanics. And Bell's theorem, I'm not going to quote all the details.
Since this time, he started teaching philosophy. He moved to a different university. I think just a year ago or something, or I don't know. He stopped teaching physics. Now he's teaching philosophy because he wants to think more about the meaning of quantum mechanics.
It's sort of a famously confusing thing to get the statement of the theory exactly, the theorem exactly right. But basically, the upshot is you can't. What's it say? What's the right thing to say? No local theory. That is to say, no theory in which, strictly speaking, influences only ever travel slower than the speed of light can match the predictions of quantum mechanics. And he quantified this in what are called the Bell inequalities. Okay. I should, by the way, give credit to David Bohm, who was another controversial quantum mechanical figure that you can read about in Adam Becker's book. It was Bohm who first cast the EPR thought experiment in terms of spins. EPR themselves talked about something closer to this momentum example that we get. They talked about positional momentum uncertainty, etc. It was Bohm who said, it's much easier if you just use spins instead. And so Bell was extremely moved by Bohm's analysis, and he proved his theorem. And the reason why it's hard to state the consequence of the theorem exactly is just because when you say match the predictions of quantum mechanics, the predictions of quantum mechanics are statistical, right? There's a certain probability that certain things happen. And basically what Bell's theorem says is that any local theory is going to have the feature that you can't have the same probabilities that you have in quantum mechanics. And in fact, this is a testable prediction, and people have now done the tests. Years later, it took a while, but people have done the tests, and of course, quantum mechanics comes off looking great. So roughly speaking, Bell has proven that what Einstein, Podolsky, and Rosen were looking for cannot possibly exist. Now, there are loopholes, of course. The most obvious loophole is let your theory be non-local. Okay, so that's not really a loophole. It's just saying, fine, people misinterpret Bell's theorem as saying you can't have hidden variables. Hidden variable theories are what EP and R had in the back of their minds, but they didn't talk about them in their paper. They weren't proposing some new hidden variable theory. Louis de Broglie invented a hidden variable theory, and he actually spoke about it at the Solvay meeting in 1927. And he got a hard time, especially from Wolfgang Pauli. And if you look at the transcripts of the meeting, de Broglie was completely right and Pauli was completely wrong. But Pauli was just so overbearing that de Broglie backed down and ignored his own theory for a long time. Bohm later took up the mantle and revived de Broglie's theory, so we now call it the de Broglie-Bohm theory, or just Bohmian mechanics sometimes. And the point is a hidden variable theory that is non-local, that is explicitly non-local, that admits that influences can exist that go faster than the speed of light. You can still prove that you can't use them to communicate, but it bites that bullet. It leads into the non-locality. reality. And Bohmian mechanics was constructed before Bell made his theorem. And in fact, Bohmian mechanics was one of the inspiration for Bell's theorem. So it's very weird that today a lot of physicists think that Bell proved that hidden variable theories don't work because he actually believed in hidden variable theories and was inspired by them. What he proved is that local hidden variable theories won't work. So that's an obvious way out of this conundrum. But there are two other ways out, different ways you can choose to bite the bullet. So two other
I don't know what is local hidden variables versus hidden variables.
assumptions that go into proving Bell's theorem. One assumption is that experiments have definite outcomes. So when you measure the spin of a particle, I said, definite, give me a break. I said you get either spin up or spin down, right? That sounds like you get a definite outcome to that experiment. There is a little loophole though, right? What if, when you do that experiment, both outcomes become real, but in different copies of reality? What if there's one copy of reality where it's spin up and one copy of reality where it's spin down?
Yeah, that's nonsense.
Yeah. What if there are different universes, different worlds, one might say,
Yeah, that's nonsense.
in which you get different measurement outcomes? If that's true, then Bell's theorem just doesn't apply, right? Bell assumes that you get definite measurement outcomes. And something like a many worlds interpretation of quantum mechanics, you don't. The wave function you do as a person, but the wave function of the universe does not. So Bell's theorem doesn't say anything. The other one, which is a little bit even weirder, I'm not going to talk about it too much, is that there is no superdeterminism. I mean, I say it's weird. I think it's weird, but there are other people who love it. So I shouldn't say it's weird. It's something that
I don't know what superdeterminism is. Wait, NASA delays Artemis. What? NASA delays Artemis return to moon. Root cause. Root cause of heat shield issue revealed.
I'm not personally a fan of, but we'd be happy to be wrong if it were proven wrong. So superdeterminism is roughly speaking the following idea. Determinism, oh, I shouldn't say it's weird. It's something that I'm not personally a fan of, but we'd be happy to be wrong if it were proven wrong. So superdeterminism is roughly speaking the following idea. Determinism, like Laplace and Newton had, is if I knew everything that the universe was doing at one moment in time.
So Bitcoin passed the 100,000? No, it's just under. All right, so the Kurds took the east of Syria, and Putin says he doesn't expect to save Assad. All right.
I can use the equations of physics to predict the future or retropredict the past. It's deterministic. It's nothing random, nothing stochastic. Okay. Superdeterminism says that, but also says, and there are some initial conditions you're not allowed to consider. Okay. So in other words, it's not so in the Laplacian way of looking at things. You give me any set of positions and velocities, any possible initial condition to start with, and I can predict what the universe will do. Superdeterminism adds a restriction on the set of conditions, the set of universes you're allowed to consider. And basically, you could cook the books in a theory like.
Wait, what?
Laplacian way of looking at things. You give me any set of positions and velocities, any possible initial condition to start with, and I can predict what the universe will do. Superdeterminism adds a restriction on the set of conditions, the set of universes you're allowed to consider. And basically, you could cook the books in a theory like this, where you imagine that certain kinds of experiments are just never done, right? So if the universe did those experiments, then you would violate Bell's inequalities, or you would actually not violate them. Bell says that quantum mechanics does violate his inequalities. But the rules of superdeterminism say, but the universe never chooses to do those experiments, so you would never know, okay? And this sounds a little kooky, but I mean, there are people who are very much against it. It's like, if that's true, if you don't even let me imagine doing certain experiments, then how can I get by doing science at all? But there are other people, including Gerard de Tufte, who is one of the greatest living theoretical physicists, who thinks this is the right way to go. So I want to list it as absolutely a possible loophole to Bell's theorem. People
I don't understand superdeterminism.
sometimes ask about how important Bell's theorem is. So how important it is depends on what you're trying to do. If your project, if you're in the foundations of quantum mechanics, and your project is trying to construct the best new theory of quantum mechanics, better than many worlds or Bohmian mechanics or anything like that, then Bell's theorem is one of the most important results that you should have in mind. Because
Yeah, for me, Bell's theorem is the most. Nothing for me is as important as Bell's theorem.
Be able to match the prediction of Bell's theorem because it's a very strong prediction and it's been tested experimentally. Okay, so if you're trying to invent a new theory of quantum mechanics, Bell's theorem is really, really crucially important.
Yeah, you have to reproduce Bell's theorem.
If, on the other hand, you work in the foundations of quantum mechanics and you think that you know what the correct theory of quantum mechanics is, whether it's Bohmian mechanics or many worlds or something else, then you can stop worrying about Bell's theorem. Presumably, you've already satisfied it, right? If you're working with a theory where Bell's theorem is already satisfied, like many worlds or Bohmian mechanics, you don't have to keep worrying about it. Just like if you have classical mechanics, momentum is conserved. No matter what Hamiltonian you choose, you don't have to keep rechecking that momentum is conserved. As long as the Hamiltonian is independent of time, momentum is conserved. That's a theorem that you can prove. Okay. All right, so that's Bell's theorem. Very, very important if you're trying to invent new theories of quantum mechanics. So what is the right theory of quantum mechanics? So, there's different things that you can do. And now what I'm going to do, we've eaten our vegetables is the point. I've tried to teach you what entanglement is and some of its implications. And now we're going to try to put it to use. So let's do the most famous thought experiment ever in quantum mechanics. You've all heard of it, Schrodinger's cat. And again, here's Schrodinger coming up with a thought experiment. And I sort of said EPR were not merely stating their irritation when they wrote their paper. They were trying to make an argument based on very clearly stated assumptions. With the cat, Schrodinger really was more or less expressing his irritation. Because remember, Schrodinger, I believe it is true, didn't like the probabilistic interpretation that Max Born attached to his wave function, to Schrodinger's wave function. And part of it was the idea of the quantum world versus the classical world. Part of the Copenhagen interpretation is that individual quantum systems obey the rules of quantum mechanics. They have wave functions, the wave functions collapse when you observe them, but the observers are treated using the rules of classical mechanics. And there's even something called the Heisenberg cut, which divides the microscopic quantum world from the macroscopic classical world. Nobody ever liked this, including the people who invented the Copenhagen interpretation, but they learned to like it in some sense. Other people like Schrödinger and later Pepper and so forth just rebelled entirely at this idea that you should treat macroscopic systems as non-quantum mechanical. Of course, a macroscopic system like a person or a cat can be approximated very, very well by the rules of classical mechanics. We all agree on that. The question is, at the deeper level, should we think of cats and people as also quantum mechanical, just like we do the atoms of which they are made? And what Schrödinger tries to do with his cat example is to take quantum mechanical features, like the fact that a spin can be the superposition of up or down, and amplify that to the macroscopic world. So I don't want to belabor the actual experiment. You've probably seen it before. There's a source, a radioactive source that is emitting radiation with some random frequency. There is a detector, a Geiger counter. Detector. Geiger counter that clicks when the radioactive source releases something, and the detector smashes a vial filled with poisonous gas. Okay, and the gas, if the detector clicks, the vial is smashed, the gas is released. There's a cat. Here's the cat in the box, okay? And in Schrödinger's original version of the thought experiment, the gas was cyanide, and it kills the cat if it's released. In my version of the thought experiment, since I want to be kinder to the cat, we make it sleeping gas, and if the gas is released, then the cat falls asleep. Okay, so here's a cat sleeping like that. And the point is, Schrödinger's point in this thought experiment is, sure, it might be the case that there is an experiment in a box like this with a property that I don't know whether the gas got released, and therefore I don't know whether the cat is awake or asleep, okay? But that's not what quantum mechanics says. Quantum mechanics says, if you believe the Copenhagen interpretation, quantum mechanics says that there is an amplitude, right? There's a quantum mechanical wave function for the cat. After all this happens, psi cat goes into a superposition, something like 1 over square root of 2. Cat is awake plus cat is asleep. This is under the assumption that the cat itself does not count as an observer, okay? But Schrödinger is sort of poking fun at the Copenhagen interpretation because the Copenhagen interpretation never tells us what counts as an observer. So Schrödinger says if I imagine that only people are observers, then by something like this, I would put the cat, which is a big macroscopic object, into a superposition of awake and asleep. And it is only when I open the box and I, as a human being, observe the cat, that the cat collapses its wave function and becomes either awake or asleep. And Schrödinger's point is, come on, surely you don't believe that. Surely you don't believe that in this box there's a cat that is
Schrödinger underestimated his opponents, their craziness.
neither awake nor asleep, but it's in a superposition of both until I open the box, and then it's both, okay? So now you can mess with the details of this experiment or not, but what I'm gonna do is try to tell a different story. So what we wanna do is be a little bit more careful, okay, about the system that we're dealing with here, because the point of entanglement, remember, and this is why entanglement is crucial to the story, the point of entanglement is that we should never really talk about the wave function of individual parts of the quantum mechanical system. We should only ever talk about the wave function of the system as a whole, okay, the system all at once, because the different parts of the system can be entangled. Now, there might be certain special circumstances under which part of the system is sort of separated out and is not entangled with the rest of the world. That's completely allowed, but often systems will be entangled, and in particular in a situation like this, they very much will be. So let's ask the question, what if we include in the wave function, not just the wave function of the cat, but the wave function of an observer as well, okay? So what happens when the observer opens the box? And Schrödinger, could have made, I don't know if he did make this argument or not, but he certainly has something like this in mind himself. He says, what we know is true, is that sometimes you see the cat awake, sometimes you see the cat asleep, but you never see the cat in a superposition of both. What that means is, if the cat's wave function is 100% awake, then it better be the case that I observe the cat to be awake, and likewise when the cat is asleep. And just from that fact, that if the cat's awake, I observe awake, if the cat's asleep, I observe asleep, from that fact and from the Schrödinger equation, I can show using math, using actually very trivial math, that the following thing must be true. So this is psi for the cat, but we don't want that, right? This is not the good way of thinking about quantum mechanics because the cat is not alone in the universe. So let's write down the wave function of...
Why would you delete? You should just put a red X so that we know what you didn't like.
Once you open the box, cat plus you. You are the observer. And what Schrödinger argues is that it's 1 over square root of 2, cat awake, plus you saw the cat awake. Actually, I shouldn't say plus here. For technical reasons, I should say and. You see it awake. That is one part of the wave function. Plus, the other part of the wave function is the cat's asleep.
Oh.
And you saw it asleep.
And of course, we missed somebody's comment. Oh. Yeah, because my phone died. Of course. Al Trucker, you should join us. What's the question? We're watching this guy, Sean Carroll, explaining Schrödinger's cat and entanglement. So you let me give you a link if you want to join. All right.
In other words,
wait.
And again, this is
say something. You see that Carroll is doing a great job of explaining superposition, how it collapses when observed. Do I see that he's doing a great job? I mean, he's doing a great job explaining, I guess, the math. I like when he explains the math, I find it more palatable, I guess. When he does, this is the Dirac notation. Anyway, what's up?
Yeah. Oh, no, can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
good. All right. Well, I was just listening I saw that you were gonna I don't know, you're trying to put down Bell's theorem at some point here.
Hmm.
As usual, I find your approach to physics very strange, but I just wondered what you were up to. And I was listening, and I just put my catchphrase, the fuck is going on here?
Hmm.
That's fuck is French for steal.
Mm. But what do you mean you find my approach to physics to be strange?
Well, I don't think like that gets into like a big discussion, but you find something that you don't understand, and
Hmm.
then you work on understanding it by saying
Hmm.
that you don't understand some other part of it. And I feel like if you had an advanced physics degree, you'd be better equipped to tackle these subjects. That's what I think. I admire the fact that you're trying to understand physics. I myself enjoy trying to understand physics.
Hmm. You don't know what degrees I have.
No, I don't. I don't know
So
what degrees you have,
you keep
but
assuming you keep assuming I don't have some advanced degrees.
I have 0 degrees. I have no degrees at all.
Why is it
Um,
important?
it
Why?
isn't
Why?
it isn't important
Hmm.
if you had casually learned the things that are taught in an advanced physics degree, you'd already be you wouldn't say I don't understand this. You'd say I've heard of this, I've learned about what this is, and I disagree with it based on X, Y, and Z. But you don't, and that's how I know that you don't have an advanced education in this, because the people that I work with who have advanced degrees in this can speak very well about what the concept is or educate themselves about it enough to have a really good conversation about it. And that's why I find it strange. But I also appreciate the fact very much that you are trying to find out about
I don't understand. wh- I don't understand what you're saying. I just don't understand it.
it. Okay, well, I mean, that fits in with some of the other things that are going on. So, uh, what's your take on quantum superposition?
Well, first of all, it has nothing to do with physics. This is not a question in physics.
How
This
so?
has nothing to do with physics. You don't need any advanced knowledge of physics to have this discussion.
No, I have no advanced knowledge of physics other than what I've learned casually. Um,
Right, but I don't think you need to know any physics. This has
mm,
nothing to do with physics.
well, you'd have to at least understand that that you could have a non-binary position for a wave function, say, like, or
Non.
two possible ones, like this wave this so like the idea that in the quantum, like quantum physics, which I remember you saying before. I don't know if you changed your position. I remember you saying before that you dislike quantum physics and don't believe in it. Is that still the case, or do you believe in quantum physics?
This has nothing to do with quantum physics. Of
Are you
course,
sure?
I completely agree with all of mainstream physics. I don't have anything
Okay.
against. I agree with Sean Carroll basically about, I would say, 99.99999% of what he says. I mean,
Fair
it's
enough.
just
He is a very erudite individual on
no, nothing to do
topics
with
of
that.
physics.
Nothing to do with
No,
him being
he's not just a smart guy. He's extremely well read on a
no,
variety
nothing
of topics
nothing
in
to do
his
with that.
in
No,
physics. He's a
nothing
very
to
smart
do.
guy, and he
No, I'm
knows his
not.
shit.
No, no, no. I'm not saying I agree with him because he is Sean Carroll. I'm saying I agree with him because he is mainstream physics. That's all I mean. I don't disagree with mainstream physics. I don't mean that he's a genius. I like him as a person. I like him as a teacher.
Hmm.
I listen
Yeah,
to
he
him.
communicates very well.
Yeah, he's a
He's a
yeah,
fantastic science communicator.
yeah,
He's intelligent, well read,
yeah,
and
yeah.
he understands the topic that he's on, and he also
Hmm.
as most very smart people do, he either puts a footnote on comments he makes outside of his direct field, that it's not his direct field and it's an opinion based on a smaller amount of knowledge than someone more learned on the topic than he very much readily admits that when it's the case, and I appreciate that about him most of all. But
I
he's,
don't.
so what he's explaining very well here, like what a superposition is, where something like a particle could have a couple of potential outcomes. Like it could be one or the other, and until you check what it is, it's in a superposition. It has both. It has both. It's not that it has the potential to have both. It literally has both situations in it, and when it's observed, it falls into, or it collapses into, a wave function that tells you what it is. You're like, once you examine it, it develops one or the other of the two possibilities, but it literally exists in both.
That's the question.
Simultaneously, and that's something that people have trouble understanding, and yet experimentation, and I don't have any looked up. I'm driving, so I'm just talking conceptually about my understanding of Schrodinger's cat, and which is it's a thought experiment. And I think some people are real cat fans and they don't like the idea that a cat could die, even though it's an imaginary cat and no cat was ever actually put in a box, at least not by these physicists. If somebody's done that, it's because they're some sort of psychopath. But the idea that it's asleep or awake, so it could be both awake and asleep, and then when you check it has either fallen asleep or it has not.
What's the difference between killing a cat and putting it to sleep?
Well, if you use putting it to sleep as a euphemism for killing it, then nothing. But if you say putting it to sleep, where he talks about using a sleeping, a chemical that allows it to be anesthetized, for instance, like you would for a surgery, and then it would wake up again 6 hours later and not know what had happened.
But what's the difference?
There's quite a difference. There's quite a difference to a cat lover, but it's an imaginary cat in an imaginary box. And
what's the
therefore,
difference?
it's kind of a silly thing. But
what's the difference between an imaginary cat and a real cat?
Well, most human beings have probably interacted with a cat at some point in their life. They're aware that it's a four-legged feline creature that people keep as pets, and some of them are feral and live out in the wild, and some of them are just sort of live on the streets of cities and whatnot. And some bigger cats exist in the wild, and that's just their natural habitat. And they're great hunters and predators and apex predators in many cases. I think people understand what a cat is because whether they've seen one in a book or at the zoo, tigers and lions are widely taught to children in books about animals. Like that's, I think the reason for using a cat is because people know what a cat is. Maybe Schrodinger had a pet cat and was like, well, if I put my cat in this box, and it could be both alive and dead at the same time. Which from what I remember, Schrodinger wasn't a big fan of this. He was putting this together to say this is kind of a preposterous idea. And yet, when it's been investigated further, they have actually discovered that this superposition is a thing that literally happens.
How do you know?
Because, well, the reason why I know is because I have checked with people that know better than I do on this topic.
How do you know they know? How do you know they know? But how do you know they know?
Because they've done experimentations.
Bohr was a football player, so Bohr was.
I was a football player too, but that doesn't disqualify me from understanding science or listening to scientists explain how something works.
How do you know they know? How do they know? How do you know what they know?
Well, you know what? Unfortunately, all of us are only going to live on this earth for a limited number of years. Most people are, well, we know due to statistics that are taken by census takers and the like, and they get a good grasp of what's going on. And also births and deaths are recorded typically, at least in the Western world, in hospitals and whatnot. And so we know how many people are in the world. We know what average life cycles are of human beings. And we also probably know anecdotally, most of us that have lived long enough have met people that have died, met people that were born. Name one person who was never born. Like it's a very commonplace thing. And it happens with 8 billion plus people on Earth. It happens with extreme frequency. And so we have good numbers to show that people have limited lifespans. That's something that, and I do trust that the statistics being kept are being kept with some good thought on how it ought to be done, and being done properly, following the rules and regulations of that sort of thing. And people are taught statistics are a little bit more complicated than just adding up a bunch of stuff, right? There's some mathematics involved that helps people get rid of anomalies and outliers and stuff like that, and figure out what real results are by eliminating shit like that. And people specialize in that. And so we have to trust that the people that specialize in it do it correctly, and that they have ways to analyze that it's done correctly, and that they work with other people who check their work, which is what we also expect from science and scientists. And because modern science is really, it doesn't exist without being published. Something could be true and not be published, and many things are true and are not published because we haven't discovered them yet. But once we figure something out and figure out an experiment to test it, and we do those experiments, and we rigorously test those experiments and allow others to take the same concept and test it, we then have the basis for eliminating wrong results and bad results, null results, things that are just like failed experiments because they were incorrectly constructed, and back to the drawing board we go. That's a perfectly reasonable way to approach science. And it's also perfectly reasonable that, well, I don't know what you do for a living. Like you can, or you can decide to or not, that I was taught properly how to drive this truck safely and correctly, and get myself down the road with my loads and in one piece, and follow the rules of the road and stuff like that, as do many millions of professional truck drivers who get things where they need to go on a daily basis all around the world. It's a very commonplace job that I do. And I don't know if you can doubt when you see someone driving erratically or poorly that they've been taught properly, and that does happen. But other people call them out and say, hey, that's not cool. And in fact, we have regulators who come and check that trucks are being driven properly. We have police, and where I live, there's a special like commercial trucking enforcement agency that comes around on the road. It's a commonplace thing. They exist all over North America. I suspect they exist in other countries too. And if they can regulate trucking, what makes you think that science is somehow escapes this?
Well, okay, let's start over. So, what's your position? So you think? I mean, what's your position on Bell's theorem? Let's start from that.
I do not at this point have a position on Bell's theorem, because I haven't investigated it well enough to know. But I heard you saying that Bell's theorem is the most important thing to you. I heard you say that a little bit earlier in your talk here. So
yeah.
Why don't you explain Bell's theorem to me, and I'll let you know if I have any opinions about it.
Bell's theorem, I'll read to you the conclusion of Bell's paper.
Okay.
There must be a mechanism whereby the setting of one measuring device can influence the reading of another instrument, however remote. Moreover, the signal involved must propagate instantaneously.
All right. This sounds like something related to quantum entanglement.
Whatever, but I mean, this is a violation of the speed of light. This is called a violation.
It's only a violation of the speed of light if a signal is being sent
he says
faster than the speed of light.
That's what he says.
Quantum entanglement suggests, and this is something that I'm pretty sure Einstein called it spooky action at a distance, right?
Yeah, but I mean, Einstein disagrees. There's two camps, and Bell proved Einstein was wrong.
Well, Einstein, I don't know if Einstein was wrong, but it does, calling it spooky for the time that he lived in. I mean, it is, I think even now people would find it spooky that something could actually, like that two particles could exist in different places in the universe. And I think that's, that's really, it's something that once you learn that quantum entanglement has been well researched and tested and documented, you then have to say, well, Bell's theorem saying that this must be the case. I'd have to investigate Bell's theorem exactly. Like I'd like to sit down and read the wording and read up on it a little bit more to give like a full explanation of how I think this is. But when I heard you describe this conclusion, the conclusion seems to align quite a bit with quantum entanglement, because quantum entanglement says that if you have two particles that are, and they could both be in superposition, but let's eliminate that for a second. Like if one, like you could have a photon, for instance. You could have two quantum entangled photons, and you could have one that is polarized in one way. So its wave is going, say, let's call it, let's use the compass just to be clear. Well, it's going north and south as you look at it head on. And the other one is going east and west. It's going that way. And you could measure, and once you measure the photon that's going north and south, you then know for certain that the entangled one is definitely the one that's entangled with it is definitely east and west if the other one is north and south. And when you go and examine it, you find 100% of the time that is indeed the case.
Usually with photons, they're both polarized the same way.
Well, they could be, but there's something, it doesn't matter. Like I'm using what I think is a very easy way to identify that one is one way and the other is the other way. But we could describe them in some other way, right?
Yeah, it doesn't matter. Yeah.
But if they're entangled, even if I'm on Jupiter and you're on Mercury, and I examine mine, I know that you have the other. If we know that those particles are whether they're photons or some other particle, if I examine mine and find it as one and the other one is entangled with it, we know unequivocally that you are holding on to the opposite one, because that's how entanglement works.
But how is it different than a pair of shoes?
Well, sometimes when people use analogies, which are imperfect analogies.
No, not an analogy.
Yeah, let's say, my work boots. Let's say I have an old pair of work boots, and I take those work boots, and I don't know which one I have. I pick them up and throw them in a box without looking at them. I have two boxes. One of them I send to Mr. Slave, and the other one I keep here. And when I know that you've received it, I open my box and find the right boot. I know that you have the left boot because my boots are entangled in a non-quantum way, because that isn't quantum entanglement, but it demonstrates the concept. If I have the right boot, you have the left boot, and if I have the left boot, you have the right boot, because it is a pair of boots where there was a right and left. That's the only thing I know. I just don't know which one I kept, and I don't know which one I sent to you. But when I open mine, I know for certain that you are not going to, if I open up and find the right boot and I call you up and say, Mr. Slave, which boot do you have? If you give any answer other than left, I know something fucked up is going on in the universe, because they're a pair and they go that way. And so with quantum particles that are entangled, the same thing is true, although the analogy is imperfect because that's a macro one, but it helps you understand what quantum entanglement is. And I actually highly recommend, I'll try to find this and send it to you. I don't know if I've mentioned this before. Grayson Hawk is a science communicator with he has a great manner about him in terms of explaining things. And he does a quantum entanglement talk that he teaches at a local college to him, I believe. But he's recorded his talk, and he does a tremendous job of explaining quantum entanglement and how it is known. And through his talk and some other people that I've had science discussions with, I have indeed come to understand quantum entanglement a little bit.
Okay, but
So how do you like you're saying quantum entanglement is good or bad, or like you believe in it or don't believe in it? Like that would be a good place to check in on your thinking here.
as I always tell you the same answer. I don't disagree with any experiment. I don't disagree with Sean Carroll. I don't disagree with mainstream physics. I'm not a conspiracy theorist. I don't know why
Okay.
you always have to keep checking and asking the same question. It's
Well,
not
I'm
going to change.
is it unreasonable of me to want to like I do believe in quantum entanglement because I've read up on a couple of studies that have proven it, and I also know from talking to a couple of people that work with physics and physics equipment that quantum entanglement is something that they see the results of tangentially in their experiments, because quantum entanglement is a byproduct of their experiments, but it's not what they're experimenting on directly. And so I do wonder, like, are you saying Bell is incorrect in this description? And Bell might not be talking about quantum entanglement. It might just be something that sounds like quantum entanglement, and I'm just not well enough read on the subject yet, which I should work on.
Yeah, Bell's paper uses quantum entanglement.
Okay.
I mean, Bell's paper is about the EPR paper, and the EPR paper is already about entanglement, from what I understand.
Okay. All right. So my intuition on that was correct, that the description in that conclusion you read sounded like quantum entanglement, and so that's why I was going in that direction. But okay, so let's so you think Bell had it right then? He understood what quantum entanglement, what the entailments of quantum entanglement were.
Wait, so I disagree with Bell. I mean, it's difficult to say whether I disagree or agree. I mean, Bell, what he expressed is what I consider to be a logical fallacy.
Okay.
So Bell was correct. Bell said Einstein is wrong, and I agree with Bell that Einstein is wrong. But Bell concluded incorrectly from Einstein being wrong that Bohr was being right.
Okay. So what was Einstein incorrect about? Because Einstein did science for a number of decades, and so like I'm assuming you're not talking about Brownian motion here. Like which thing that Einstein said is directly opposed by Bell, and what did Einstein think on it, and how do we know that Einstein is incorrect?
So Einstein is the E in the EPR paper,
Okay.
which Bell is reacting to.
So this is another thing I'm not well read enough on. So he's reacting to that. Okay. So I should read up on that before I have an opinion about it. But you're discussing it as though I'm already well read on EPR, and I'm not. So I should become more familiar with that particular piece of work there.
I can tell you my opinion. I mean, I can fill you in.
I mean, it's your program talking about. Are you like the title of your program? But it's probably clickbaity or whatever to get people watching. Is about that you're disproving Bell, right?
The title is "Let's continue proving that Bell's paradox is utter nonsense."
That it's nonsense. Okay. Okay, so it's utter nonsense, but it's not wrong.
Right.
Okay.
It's just utter nonsense.
It's just utter nonsense. Okay. Well,
Yeah.
I mean, fair enough. I mean, many things that are true sound like utter nonsense, and therefore, much like Schrodinger's cat that's both dead and alive, something can be true and utter nonsense at the same time.
Okay, I mean, but okay. So my point is that Bell incorrectly concluded. Bell fell into his own trap. So Bell said there's two ways of viewing the universe. One is Bohr's way, and the other is Einstein's way.
Okay.
Bohr's way is also known as quantum mechanics, and Einstein is also known as hidden variables. So there's two camps: Bohr with quantum mechanics and Einstein with hidden variables.
Okay.
Einstein, in his paper EPR, in the EPR paper, he said quantum mechanics is incomplete. You need something else.
Okay.
And Bohr said, no, quantum mechanics is complete. The universe is incomplete. The universe actually has real superposition. That
Okay.
a particle, until we measure it, it doesn't have a state. It doesn't have a definite state. It doesn't have
Okay.
a location. It doesn't have a velocity. It doesn't have a spin. I don't even know what Bohr would say about its mass and its charge and other states. Probably he would say the same. That until we measure a particle, it's in a superposition of every possible answer.
Yes. Yeah. Okay.
And Einstein said, that's nonsense. That doesn't make any sense. And Einstein in the EPR paper said, let's use entanglement in order to resolve the superposition question. So entanglement was offered by EPR. EPR again is Einstein, Podolsky, Rosen. So when I say EPR or Einstein, it's the same thing.
Okay.
So EPR said, let's use entangled particles in order to resolve superposition. And the question originally that EPR came to resolve is superposition real or is superposition not real? Meaning, does a particle have a definite state before we measure it or only after we measure it? Is the moon there when we're not observing it, or is the moon not there and it only is there after we observe it?
I don't think the moon.
But the moon
I don't
is
know. Is the moon quantumly entangled with another rocky body in the universe? Like
this is before we propose entanglement. Entanglement is proposed by EPR in order to resolve superposition.
I mean, it seems like this seems like a question of object permanence. So, like the moon, the moon may not exist forever, but the moon has existed for a very long time.
Yes.
And the moon, even when the moon is set, like out of my, I don't know where you are, but let's say you live in Australia and I live in Canada. That's something I don't fail to divulge to people. I live in Canada, so let's say you're in Australia. For the sake of argument, I'm in Canada. You can see the moon because the moon has risen where you are, day or night. It doesn't really matter. And I'm looking up at the sky and I see the moon nowhere at all. Yet the moon was up last night when I was driving back from the load I went to do. And I saw the moon in the sky last night at least twice. And so I know the moon was there last night. It doesn't surprise me at all that the moon has traveled to a point in the sky between the rotation of Earth and the moon's orbit around the Earth and everything else that goes on. I believe the moon is still orbiting Earth. I believe the Earth is still spinning, and I believe the moon is not visible to me. But you call me up and say, "Hey, it's Mr. Slave. I see the moon. It's here. Don't worry, it didn't go anywhere." And I'm not the least bit surprised to find you telling me that. And I believe in the moon. That it's still there, whether I see it or not, and whether you tell me it's still there or not. I am expecting the moon to come back around to my line of sight at some point in the next 48 hours, depending on when I'm up and about and what I'm looking at.
Then
I
you have
never
just
expect the moon to disappear completely from Earth's
then
orbit.
you
I think that would be very odd to have that happen.
then congratulations, you're just like me. You don't believe in quantum mechanics.
No, that is not that like how the moon like how the moon fits into quantum mechanics is that quantum mechanics exists in the subatomic level of all the particles that the moon is made of. The moon is not able to exist without quantum mechanics. Quantum mechanics is simply a description of things that happen at a very, very small scale that is not something that humans are used to interacting with, despite the fact that we are made of those very particles ourselves.
Every time you observe the moon, you're observing a quantum mechanical object known as a photon. And the moon
many photons are reflected off of the moon. And so whether I see the bright part of the moon or whether I see the sort of shaded part of the moon, which is what I saw last night, it was a crescent moon last night, and I could see the outline and the shadow of the moon, and I could see the brightly lit surface of the moon as well. Even though it was a very snowy, cloudy night, there was a small break when I stopped to grab a coffee, and I looked up at the sky as I walked back to my rig, and I said, "Hey, the moon looks pretty cool tonight through these snow clouds." There was a little break. I could see it. I didn't see it most of the time. It was snowing very hard. There was a lot of terrible accidents, and the roads were very slick and snow covered, and I was not paying attention to the moon. But when I stopped to grab a coffee, check out the restroom and all that stuff, I was like, "Hey, this is a cool moon." And I often get a chance to see that either early in the morning when I'm on my way into work or late at night when I'm on my way back, depending on where the moon is and what time of year it is and all that sort of stuff. I see it at different places. And the moon's a cool thing. But what I'm actually seeing is the reflection of photons from the sun off of the moon. And so yes, I could understand that there could be quantum entanglement of the photons reaching my eyeballs.
Before entanglement, we don't need entanglement. You already agree with Einstein and with me, and you already disagree with quantum mechanics.
How so? The moon having object permanence doesn't disprove quantum mechanics. That doesn't make sense.
Yes, it does. That's literally the opposite.
Okay, well, explain that to me.
Object permanence is literally the opposite of superposition.
Really?
Yes. I mean, superposition means that a particle has every possible state all at once. It's in a superposition of every possible state, meaning the moon is there and it's not there. It's far away and it's nearby.
The moon is not a subatomic particle.
But it's composed of subatomic particles.
It is composed of them, yes, and they can all have various states.
Yes,
yeah,
so
you're suggesting that they all be in I'm going to call it a phase, for lack of a better word. You're saying that all of the quantum particles that make up all of the atoms, that make up all of the molecules, that make up the entire moon, you're suggesting that they all exist somehow in phase in a quantum superposition where they all share a superposition where when I look at the moon, they collapse into a function where I see them, and when the moon escapes my view, that they've gone back into a superposition where the moon just doesn't fucking exist yet. Is that what you're saying? Because that doesn't sound like it makes a lot of sense to me.
That's quantum mechanics. That's literally
that is not quantum mechanics. Quantum mechanics doesn't deal with macro scale things like the moon. The moon travel, like the moon being a permanent object that has existed in the orbit of Earth for many billions of years. That is not a thing. That is not a thing that is affected by quantum mechanics at that level. But that doesn't mean quantum mechanics don't interact with it.
But the moon is composed of elementary particles, each of which is in a superposition, each of which is smeared all over the known, the visible, and maybe even the invisible universe. Right? Every electron in every atom is potentially everywhere in the universe, according to quantum mechanics. So,
Okay.
according to quantum mechanics, until you observe it, it is in a superposition of every possible state. So basically, the moon is not, you cannot say anything about the moon until you observe it. So you claiming object permanence is a violation of quantum mechanics.
Okay, Mr. Slave, where have you, like, the last time we spoke was a few weeks ago. Did you
Mhm.
not exist that entire time?
According to quantum mechanics, that's correct. As far as you're concerned, I don't exist except for when you interact with me.
That
Only
isn't
then.
that isn't true. The fact, like, had you expired and I was unaware of it because we're not such close acquaintances that I would be kept apprised of your life and death. But had you expired, I would be very sad to hear it. But,
Yeah, but
the important thing is, though, I assumed you kept on going about your life
then you're
during the
that's a
time. During
then that's
it's
then
not
that
it's not a
assumption.
violation.
Yes, it is.
Who experiences life this way? Like, did you jump into a superposition of existence and non-existence the entire time
That's
that you and I were not
exactly
talking? That
that's
doesn't make sense at
exactly
all.
fine. Then you agree with me and Einstein against Bohr and quantum mechanics. That's
But
why.
you're trying to apply the superposition of quantum particles that exist at these things. That doesn't stop them from composing macro-sized matter at the same time. Macro-sized matter
Yes,
can
it does.
exist while quantum superposition also exists.
No, impossible.
Yes. Yes.
No.
It absolutely can.
No, if you're telling me that every element of a building, of a skyscraper, is in a superposition, it's unstable, then the building cannot stand. You cannot tell me, well, the building.
That's not actually even true. That's not how these things work.
Yes, it is.
Matter is doing what matter does. What's being
That's-
talked about here is the fact that taking a measurement of matter is something that requires that you consider entanglement, where, like, if you measure a particle and see that it has an upspin, an entangled particle with that one would have a downspin automatically. For instance, that's just a for instance. But that doesn't mean the particle, it doesn't exist and isn't doing what it does. It just means that when you're trying to examine that specific particle, that there is a superposition that it occupies. And we know that when we study the movement of subatomic particles, when we try to observe them, we see that they don't exist in a place and a time. They exist in a likely area because they are constantly in movement. And that movement that they have, the number of particles that are moving and that are bound together, we know from experimentation at the subatomic and the atomic level, we can see that, like, electrons occupy a shell around a proton and a neutron in the nucleus of an atom. And we know that they're made of smaller particles that are doing what they do. The fact that they're doing what they do nonstop is something that we've come to know. Like, I'm driving down a highway. I've driven down thousands of times before, maybe tens of thousands of times. And it's been here every single time. They change the lanes, they redo the asphalt from time to time, but its location on Earth remains fairly constant.
Look, all you're saying is that you disagree with quantum mechanics. You keep
I am
saying
not
Yes.
saying that at all. Saying that macro matter exists and is made up of so many small particles that, like, it is a bit of a mind fuck. I'll give you that.
So
Think
that-
about
that's
how
it.
busy matter is.
No,
You
no.
understand that it's a mind fuck to understand how busy matter is.
No.
How much movement it has. It doesn't matter. Even as cold as
No.
it gets up here sometimes, matter is still zipping around really fucking fast, doing what it does.
No,
And that is a fact.
No, the zipping around has nothing to do with it. It can zip around, but the question is, is any elementary particle in a superposition until you measure it. If you say yes, then that means the moon is in a superposition until
No,
you.
that is not at all what that means. The
Yes, it
moon
is.
is made of things that are in all sorts of positions. And the moon is largely a solid object. I don't know if they found any liquid matter there. I don't believe there's much in the
Yes,
way of
but
gaseous matter. At
when
its
you say
surface, its
solid,
gravity is pretty small.
but
It doesn't really have an
but
atmosphere.
when you say solid, all you're referencing is, the outer
It's
shell.
a state of matter.
Yeah, but you're referencing basically the electromagnetic field that comes out of the electron orbiting each atom, and
Yeah,
that electron. But
yeah,
that
there's
elect.
molecular and
But
atomic bonds exist on
but
the moon, just like they do
but
in all
but
matter
hold
around the universe.
but hold on. But each electron that creates this illusion of hardness of matter, each electron is a quantum particle that, according to quantum mechanics, is in a superposition until you measure it. And this superposition says that it's basically nowhere and everywhere. It's spread all over the universe.
I don't know. I don't believe that's.
Okay, fine,
That's not
great.
what's
Then
being
you.
said. That's not what's
Yes,
being
it is.
said.
Look, yes, it is. Look, that was the EPR paper, and that's what
Well, that's
Einstein
not.
didn't.
That does not at all sound like what quantum entanglement
No,
entails at all.
This is before quantum entanglement. This is
Okay.
just the EPR paradox. This is just the EPR paper. EPR paper comes to address this notion that this is hard to swallow, and the EPR paper proposes entanglement in order to resolve and disprove this philosophy, this craziness, as you said, this mind fuck.
It's a mind fuck. It's a mind fuck for a common layperson who isn't familiar with this, and I count myself among them. That it is a mind fuck to think about things that happen at a scale that our senses are not designed to interact with. But we can make devices. We can make an apparatus that is designed to tell us when something is happening one way or another, even when something is so small it can't be resolved by the human eye.
No. When anyway, look, the question is the moon there when we're not looking? That was the question.
Yes, object permanence is a fucking thing.
No,
that's just that.
No,
and object permanence.
No,
object permanence does not fly in the face of quantum entanglement.
Yes, it does. Yes,
it does not.
Literally. Okay, look.
Nonsense.
All right, I don't know what to say. I mean, I don't know how else to say this. This is, of course, what is at stake. Now, you could say that because of superposition, so people like Sean Carroll, they believe in the multiverse, and they say that every time you observe the cat, and the cat, the universe splits in two, one in which the cat is alive and the other in which the cat is dead, one in which you observed it alive, the other you observed it dead. And Sean Carroll believes it, and this is his resolution to this ordeal.
Yeah, this is the one that's similar. It's I think it's also called the many worlds hypothesis, right?
Yes.
Yeah. No, I've heard of this. I don't consider myself to be well read on the topic. I've heard Sean Carroll and others talk about it.
But you have to take a position. So Sean
Carroll, I can have a superposition on this until I become more erudite on the matter. I think that's entirely relevant, but for now, and a great pun for this conversation.
But for now, as long as you believe in object permanence, you're in denial of quantum mechanics. You're on my camp. You're in Einstein's camp. You're in EPR camp. which Bell proved to be incorrect. Now you understand why Bell is the most important thing to disprove.
I don't know that Bell is like, and when it's disproven by you, what will change about the universe? How will we describe it? How will we describe the universe once you do this, Mr. Slade?
Exactly as the intuition, exactly like Einstein. Einstein was correct because Bell's inequality is incorrect. Bell's paradox is utter nonsense. The universe is what you see is what you get. Not like Bohr. There's no collapse of a wave function. There's no many worlds. There's no superposition. It's nonsense.
How do you explain the experiments that have been done that prove superposition and entanglement actually do happen?
Wait, you keep referencing entanglement. Entanglement is the way that EPR proposed to resolve the question about superposition. So what's your question? How do I what?
Well, it sounds like we're on the same page more or less.
So which experiment?
Except for this moon nonsense.
No, as long as you say moon nonsense, you are on my camp.
Well, the moon nonsense is that the moon exists circling around the Earth. That's made up of particles. The very small particles that make up the moon could be in a superposition.
No,
they can. They can indeed be in a superposition. And the moon itself can be made of enough particles that it still is there, shining bright with its albedo of the sun.
No. So why does Sean Carroll need the multiverse? The many worlds.
I don't know why he needs many worlds.
Because of superposition. Because he needs the.
It's a way to describe. What goes on with superposition.
No,
but is that what I gotta look into that one too? Because I've heard of it. I've heard it explained. I don't know if I fully understand it. I am a truck driver after all. My truck is there every morning when I go. Sometimes it works properly. Sometimes it doesn't. My truck is always there. Matter does what it does. Like matter the way matter interacts with temperature and moisture and stuff is affecting the way my truck's been working this week because frozen moisture changes the way things work in hydraulics and pneumatics. Yes, it does. It totally does.
Not when you don't.
And it's reliably. I can rely upon it.
Not when you don't observe it according to quantum mechanics.
Yes,
you need to
making an observation or a measurement. Making a measurement of a thing causes it to collapse into a state where you can find that it is A or it is B.
No,
to be the most simple.
No, not that you can find. No, if you don't cause the collapse, then the particle doesn't have a state.
It has a superposition. It has a superposition until measured.
Yes. So the moon is in a superposition.
The moon is a macro object. It is not a quantum object.
It doesn't matter. Yes, there's no difference. There's no difference.
There totally is a difference.
No, the truck is composed of many electrons, each of which is
and protons and neutrons and quarks and bosons and gluons and all of them are there.
Stop, but they're all in a superposition until measured. So your truck is in a superposition of being there and not there when you're not looking. That's quantum mechanics. That's why Sean Carroll
does its thing every time I show up to it. So at the macro scale, I experience object permanence. And I do absolutely none of my work at the quantum scale, and the quantum scale exists nonetheless.
Everything you do is in the quantum scale. Your truck is composed of quantum particles. If you believe that your truck is there when you're not observing it, then you don't believe in quantum mechanics. You believe in the Einstein interpretation, which Bell proved is incorrect. So you have to deal with Bell.
All right. Well, I canceled my subscription to all of their services, but I will deal with Bell. That's a telecommunications joke for those that don't get
I got it.
Yeah. They're one of the big ones in my country. They're called Bell. Named after that phone guy.
Alexander.
Okay. Yeah. There's a town not too far from where I hang out that where he's from or something, or lived. I don't remember if he's born there, but yeah, they're very proud of him. But the company that shares his name is they're a pain in the ass.
That's because
Go
of
on record
government
with that.
regulations.
Well,
Government.
it's because of a lot of things. It's also because
No.
of the way organizations are set up to monetize every goddamn thing.
That's a good thing. Anyway, so how long before you have your next truck stop?
Oh, I don't know. It says I'll get there in 25 minutes, so I can't talk forever. But I've been stuck in a lot of traffic. I don't know how good or bad it's going to be going ahead here. Let's see.
Yeah, I mean, I gotta go too. I gotta go eat and poop.
Jeez, I don't do both at the same time. That's really weird.
Oh no, I usually try to poop first and eat later.
Okay, well, I don't need to know that much about your life.
Okay.
I don't know if anybody does. I don't know if anybody's watching this thinking, "Oh my God, I wish I'd known that sooner."
Well, anyway,
I guess we can get into the superposition of your food being digested and not digested at the same
oh my
time.
God. Anyway, listen. I'm gonna take a
Mr.
break.
Slave, I'll read up on some Bell. I'll read up on some EPR. I'm good. I'm good with that. I'm good with checking into things. I'm not gonna have a full position on everything until I know more about it. And it is interesting to think about the things that are postulated.
Listen, I'm gonna take a break. Later, I'll be back, and I
Okay.
really would like. What I would like to do, I'd like you to come back, and we can continue the discussion. I can tell you as much as I know. I know very little about the whole thing. I'll tell you what I know, and I'll tell you my resolution. You tell me if you like my resolution. I think my resolution is foolproof. I mean, I think I can prove that Bell made a mistake. It's a very
So
simple.
you're gonna bring it the next time you and I have a chance to talk. You're gonna bring the resolution, like how Mr. Slave has solved this paradoxical situation. That's what you're suggesting?
I don't know if we'll be able for you to understand it, because you first need to understand all the steps, and each step. Part of the problem of Bell is that it's so convoluted that you have to. This is like archaeology. You have to understand the EPR, and then Bell, and then and each step is so confusing, and it's really. And everyone misunderstood it, and everyone blames everyone else for misunderstanding everything. So it's out of control. But I think
Okay, well, you know what? That's it might not be out of your control though. 'Cause you're looking into it. I will look into it, and I'll be very surprised to find out that no scientist has ever given this any thought whatsoever. That would surprise me greatly.
okay.
But maybe I'll find out that Mr. Slave has discovered some new corner of physics and science.
I
no
always
one's
keep
ever thought
telling,
of. That might be true.
like you shouldn't make any assumptions about who I am. You don't know who I am.
No,
I
have
might
no
be.
idea who you are. I'm not making any assumption. I'm interested
So,
to see what it is that you're discovering. It's the way you talk about things. It has nothing to do, like, for all I know, you are the world's most well-renowned quantum physicist who doesn't want to identify themselves. That's a
No, I
possibility.
don't know. No,
That is a possibility. I'm
No.
willing to admit that
No,
it
no,
might not
you-
be. It may or may not be the
No.
case. It doesn't,
No,
but
I'm
it
not.
doesn't matter. It
I'm
doesn't
not.
matter because the way you discuss things, describe and talk about them, is what gives me pause to wonder how it is that you come to the conclusions or the ponderings that you come up with. I wonder, like, why you say them the way you say them. That I find that more confusing than anything else.
Right. Good.
All right.
Anyway, I always enjoy talking to you very much.
All right. Well, whether I agree or disagree with the things that you say, it does get my mind working a little bit and opens my you've investigated things and asked questions that I haven't thought to ask, and that's always interesting to hear what questions other people are asking.
Right.
And how we know something is important. And I'm gonna try. I don't know if I'm gonna get a chance this weekend. I got a lot of stuff going on with my fellowship that I got to deal with this weekend. But maybe in another week or two, I'll have a chance to sit down and like find some of those experiments and get you some papers you could look at, because I know from discussing with a couple of people that I talk to about science that they have some good references, and I would hate to just pick one out of thin air. I would like to get ones that I've looked at before, but have them vetted by someone that knows their stuff, so that what I share with you is not just my best guess as to what's a good proof, but you know, experiments that are well documented and understood by those most erudite in the subject.
Right, but I don't disagree with any experiment. I don't have any issues with experiments. I take mainstream physics for granted, and
Well, we should still ask questions and ask
no,
how.
of course. No. Of course. I mean, I'm not a conspiracy theorist. I'm not saying Sean Carroll is lying. I'm not saying any of these guys is
Yeah. But
intentionally
you
hiding something.
You could be wrong in telling what you believe is
Yes.
the truth, right? Like
Yes.
that's fair. That's fair.
Yes.
Like and many times what's happening is we're telling the best truth that we know, and other times, and I always appreciate this conversation from some of the folks that I hear describing things. I find this excellent, is when they talk about how they're at the fringe of science, and these are some of the possibilities, and we're investigating them currently. It's some of the most exciting work done in science is not redoing what we already know, but looking at what we don't know and how we might find out whether it's A, B, or maybe even any other possibility. Maybe there's multiple possibilities, and finding out how to find out which one it is a great puzzle for the mind, and it's exciting.
Yeah. I mean,
I'll let you go. I'm gonna let you go poop,
Yeah.
and then we'll at some point. At some point, I'll see you out there, and we'll touch base. Or you know how to reach me on Discord, right?
No, but what I'm saying is I'm going to be back later today.
Oh, like today you mean? Okay, well, I don't know if I'll have time. It'll depend on what I do after the load I'm doing right now.
Okay.
Because if they send me on a longer one, I'll have a chance to chat. But if I have to go move something immediately afterwards, then that'll be different. That's
okay.
It doesn't. It's my life can change minute to minute.
Okay.
Sometimes.
Okay. Anyway, I appreciate talking to you. I'll talk to you later.
All right, great. Thanks, Mr. Slate.
I'll see you later. Bye.
Okay. All right, bye.
All right. I'm going to go. That was a great conversation. He's always a pleasure to talk to. Some guys know a lot, but are very vile, and he doesn't know a lot, but he's great to talk to. So that's, it doesn't help me that someone is a genius if all they have to say is that I'm an idiot. That's not very productive. Anyway, I'm going to go, and I'll be back later. And in greater numbers. Yeah, I want to continue listening to Sean Carroll, even though I'm really confused about how he explained the EPR. Yeah. All right. See you later. Bye-bye.